Hello, everybody live streaming. We're very excited to welcome you back to this next installment of our speaker series. We are going to be starting in just a minute. If you're live streaming at home, then please send me or Addie an email with your favorite ice cream flavor as a way of checking attendance. During the talk, please also feel free to send me or Addie questions over email. We'll be able to read them out to our guest at the end of the talk. So, keep your pens ready, write down questions you have. We'll be happy to keep talking about things after it's done. So without further ado, then we're going to welcome our speaker, Pat Millay. He's a fantastic speaker around the Archdiocese. You're right now leading the Synod at Home for Lent, right, Pat?
Yep, exactly.
Okay, so we're very excited to have him here. So thanks for coming here, Pat, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Joe. Hey, everybody. How you doing? Good to see you. Far away in your bedroom or living room or wherever you are. Give me 2 hot seconds to get this thing hooked up and get this thing put away, and we will be good to go. How are you? Maybe you're watching this on your back porch because it's like 52 degrees. I don't know, but it's great to see you. And in person. You get all my energy here in person. Congratulations. I won't embarrass you. I won't call on you. You'll be fine. It's all good. All right, whether you're here in person or at home, let's pray real quick. Get this thing started, huh? In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Lord Jesus, we gather here in your name. We ask you to be with us, to open our hearts, to help us to know your love more and more in our lives. Help us to respond with love for you, most of all, but also for all the people that we come across. Help us to know more and more today your truth, your love, and the way you call us to act in our lives. Help us to be loved and to respond with love for you and all those around us. In your name, Jesus, we pray. Amen. In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Well, it's good to see you all. It's good to be at St. Therese. I love this parish. Father Andre is a friend of ours. He went to Notre Dame just like we did. I missed being classmates with him at Notre Dame, or being in the same dorm even, by 3 months. He graduated my senior year of high school. So when I went to college freshman year, he was already gone, so I missed him. But then I met him in Minnesota, and it's all good. We actually came here for Christmas Mass 2 years ago, when you could still come to Mass with a lot of people. And there were so many people, actually, and we're so late because we have so many kids that you'll meet later on, not physically, they're not here, but you'll see them on the slides, that we sat right there, not at the church where normal people who are on time sit. We sat here in the hall, and it was great. It was still beautiful, and you have a great parish. So I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me. Like Joe said, my name is Pat. Talk more about my family, which are the folks that really matter later on. Things that you need to know is that I've been a youth minister for 14, 15 years, give or take. I love anything sugar. I'm like Buddy the Elf. Like, the more chocolate and sugar I can consume in a day, the better. So Lent is really a grind for me. So hopefully you guys are doing okay too. I'm not sure. I went to Notre Dame, like I said, which means that I care about Notre Dame football way too much. And it affects my moods during the week in the fall. So I'm way more emotionally stable right now. So you can be thankful for that. And like I said, I've been married to the most beautiful woman in the world for 12 years. And we have 7 amazing kids that I'll show you later on. But let me start with this. So like I said, I love sugar and fat and calories. I love unhealthy food. Like, I love it. It's really dangerous. Like, I don't eat as much fast food as I want because I don't eat fast food every day. And what I want to do is eat fast food every single day of my life. It's a struggle for me to drive past any Caribou Coffee or Baskin Robbins or McDonald's and not stop, right? I've developed a better habit, but I'm still working on it, right? I'm like a recovering sugar, unhealthy foodaholic. The other problem is that I don't love working out. I do work out because it justifies all the junk food that I eat, right? But I don't love it. I don't enjoy it at all. Kenna, the other year, maybe a year or two ago, asked me just a hypothetical question, right? She said, if working out didn't do anything for, and I stopped her mid-sentence. I didn't even know where she was going, but I could get ahead of it. And I was like, no. Whatever the end of that sentence is, no. If exercise didn't do blank, I would never do it again. It doesn't feel good. I don't like it. I would avoid it at all costs, except that apparently my body needs it, right? So I love unhealthy food, and I don't love working out. And you can see maybe there's a problem with that, with the way our bodies work. And the fact is, I wish it didn't matter. Like, I wish I was built in a way that I could eat anything I ever wanted to, and I could do nothing. I could never get off my couch. I wish my body worked that way. Unfortunately for me, that's just the way it is, right? Unfortunately for me, that's just the way I'm made. Like, you and I are not made to eat Cheetos and ice cream and just play video games and watch Netflix 20 hours a day. Like, that's not the way we're built, it turns out. I don't like it most times, but it's just the way we were designed and made. It's our nature, you could say, right? It's the way we're built. And the problem is, right, we try to fight this all the time. We try to ignore or pretend or believe that it doesn't have to be that way. You know, we'll think to ourselves like, well, yeah, I mean, it's nice to eat good food. It's nice to work out, but you don't have to. Like, it's not the way this, like, we're a necessary thing for my life, you know? Think of like all the commercials you see for like diet pills, all these fad diets, right? The latest exercise machine that's going to make you fit, just like the beautiful people that use it on the commercials, right? Like, we think that all of these tricks are going to change the way our body works. But the truth is, like, it's not a secret. No one's hiding the truth from us. If you eat good food and you work out, you move your body, you will be healthy. That's the way your body was designed to work, right? It's not some big secret that they're keeping from us. That's just the way it works, right? And in America, actually, this issue is even more acute, you could say. Like, we struggle with this as Americans more than any other country. I don't know if you know this, but I looked it up. In 2020, all of last year, right, Americans spent more money than any country in the world on fitness. I'll give you 3 seconds at home or here to think to yourself, how much money did the United States of America, did we spend on fitness last year, on trying to be healthy? The answer is $264 billion with a B dollars, right? Now, for comparison, how much do you think Americans, how much do you think the American government with our taxes spent on public education last year in the United States? $64 billion. We spent almost 5 times, that's not true, that's bad math. We spent 4 times more on fitness, on trying to convince ourselves that we can be healthy without eating well or working out, than we did on educating the children of America like you, right? We're obsessed with this idea because we don't like the truth. We're in denial. We think to ourselves all the time, right? If I just buy this thing, then I can be healthy. If I can just buy the right workout clothes, if I go to Lululemon enough, if I get a Peloton, if I get the right, like diet pill, if I have the right personal trainer on YouTube, if I just buy the right thing, then healthy food and exercise doesn't have to be the way it is. I can be different. It's different for me, right? The problem is we know what works, right? But it's not a secret. We eat healthy food and we exercise, but it's hard. We know what works. It's just hard, and it takes patience. It's easier to spend $100 on an outfit than it is to actually change your habits. It's hard. It takes time. But the trick is, it's the only thing that really works in the long run, right? I mean, like, a treadmill is fine. Get a gym membership, wear some nice clothes, whatever you want. But at the end of the day, those will not make you fit. Eating well, working out will keep your body healthy, right? G.K. Chesterton is one of my favorite smart Catholic people throughout the generations. He was a very large, very intelligent British man, kind of at the turn of the century in England. And he once said that the Christian ideal has not been tried and found wanting. It's been found difficult and left untried. I'll translate that for you. What he's saying is, it's not like there's a million people out there who have tried living the way that the church tells us to live, right? Following the commandments, following the moral teachings. It's not that we've all tried it and we've all thought to ourselves, you know what, I don't like it. It's kind of boring. It's not for me. It's not very fun. He said what the world is full of is people like me and you probably who look at it from a distance and say, that's really hard. I don't want to do it. That doesn't mean that it's bad. It just means that we sometimes don't have the courage to actually do the right thing. And I'm in the same boat as you, right? But it's the only thing that works in the long run. Just like exercise and healthy food is what works for our bodies, they're the teachings of the church that the Holy Spirit has shown us are true that work for our souls. and it's the only thing that works in the long run. So the title for today is The Church and Sex, Who Cares, right? Because at the end of the day, right, you and I who are Catholic, we have this Catholic Church, right? The magisterium, the Pope and the bishops and all the theologians, the teaching authority that listen to the Holy Spirit, that communicate that to us as in the truth of what the church has always taught, right? But at the end of the day, like, who cares, right? I've been a youth minister for 14, 15 years. I've been surrounded for more than a decade with people who frankly just don't care, right? Because really, I've heard it a million different ways, right? Who cares what the church says about my sexuality, my body, my feelings, my desires, my actions? Like, why should I care what some old guy in Rome thinks about what I should do with my life, right? So there's a few options here, right? One of these three things could be true. Option one, the church is led by power-hungry men who just want to control us. It's actually a pretty common narrative for people outside of the church and even some people inside the church. That's an option, right? That could be true. Option two, the church is one way of looking at the world, and it's not bad. Like, it's not bad to believe the things the church does. It's just not for everyone. So they can't tell me what to do with my life. They don't know me, right? Like, it's not a bad thing. It's a nice way to live, but it's just not my way, right? That's a possible reason too. It's a possible way to look at things. And in both of those situations, I shouldn't listen to anything that anyone Catholic ever has to say. But the third option is interesting. The third option is that the church is led by the Holy Spirit, that the church is literally led by God. And God is the source of all truth. So the things that the church knows are what will truly make us happy. And they know what will truly make us miserable and desperate and hurt. So the church does everything that she can to stop us from being hurt. I don't know about you, but I was a teenager many years ago. You're teenagers now. Those three options, right? The church wants to control me. The church has some nice rules, but they're not for me. And the church is literally telling me the truth and trying to save me from harm. Those are all three ways that I looked at my parents growing up, right? Like, there were times that I look at my mom and dad be like, why don't you let me live my life? I was kind of angsty when I was in like 9th, 10th grade. So I'd be really spiteful. Like, what are these stupid rules trying to control my life? What's wrong with you? And sometimes I would look at them and just say, like, I mean, your rules aren't bad. They're just dumb for me. They don't apply to me, right? But sometimes I would look at my parents and say, you might actually be saying things that are true that I don't know are true. You might actually love me enough to tell me hard things and protect me from things that will hurt me, right? And it's actually really beautiful and important to us that that's the way we respond to our parents sometimes, because the church, one of the ways we talk about the Catholic Church is as our mother, right? That mother church. Like, sometimes we look at our mom, the church, and we're like, what are you trying to control me for? Sometimes we sinners look at the church and we say, well, your rules are fine for other people, but come on, not for me. But sometimes we look at our mother church and we say, like, you're literally led by God, right? Like, if I walk away from you, it's at my own risk. Like, there are things that are hurtful out there you're trying to protect me from. My favorite example of this is my bride, the mother of our children, right? She had this really cruel, mean rule that she enforced with our kids last summer. We live on a normal city street over on the St. Paul side, and she had the audacity and the just malice to tell our children that they can't play football in the street. Like, what was she thinking? Like, the kids were screaming, they were offended. I was looking at her like, come on, lighten up, Mom. You know, I'm just kidding, obviously. That's a great rule. But the kids were like horribly traumatized by this, right? They were looking at the street like, Mom, there's so much room. Look, like, our backyard is not huge, okay? There's so much space in the street. Why can't we play football in the street? And what Kenna told them with her words was, because I love you too much to watch you get hurt. What she could have said truthfully is, because you'll die if you play in the street. That's where the cars are, so that's where you would get hurt, right? It's easy for my kids to look at Kenna and think to her like, why are you trying to control my life? What's wrong with you? Why would you limit my freedom like that? Why don't you just let me do whatever I want? And Kenna's response as their loving mother is, because I love you too much to let you do things that will hurt you, right? She can see the things that will hurt her kids more clearly than they can. So she loves them enough to give them rules that they don't like, right? And the same is true for you who are older. You don't want to play football in the street, but maybe you want to do other things that your parents might know are hurtful for you. Maybe there are things that you want to do that even God himself knows will hurt you. So he gives you commandments to save us from ourselves. So to get to the practical details, though, in terms of like, yeah, but why? Like all the questions that burn in your hearts about like, well, why can't I do this? Why do I have to do that? To get to that, we have to build a foundation, right? Because none of this will make any sense unless we build on things that I am convinced are true after experience and logic and reason. And I'm going to propose to you to consider these things and ask yourself, is it possible that this is true? Not because some old guy in Rome told me it's true, not because some weird guy from St. Paul told you it's true. Like within yourself, asking the genuine questions, are these things true? Is there truth here? Look inside your heart and tell me if this is true, right? I can make a few promises before we get into the details. Number one, this topic can be awkward and difficult depending on who you're talking to about it with. I promise you this will not be awkward and difficult, especially if you're at home. But even if you're here, I will not embarrass you. I will not call on you. This is not an exercise in making you feel goofy and awkward, right? This is true, beautiful, and exciting stuff. Like there's nothing to be ashamed of here, right? Number two, I can promise you this will not be too boring, right? Not because I'm exciting, but because this issue is something that affects all of us. This is ultimately relevant, right? Every single day, you have thoughts, feelings, and actions that are related to the way that you see your body and other people's bodies, right? Number three, you will see yourself and other people in this topic because this is human nature, right? There's not one moment of one day that we go through life that we're not affected by things to do with our bodies, our sexuality, our desires, our chastity, and our virtue. And finally, that this will reveal secrets to peace, happiness, and freedom in your life. All of the high schoolers that I know who in high school, in college, and afterward were the most happy are the ones who lived this the most fully. And all the ones who struggled the most with even things like anxiety and depression, loneliness, despair, were the ones who really had a hard time buying into this truth, right? So let's set the foundation. Ready? Here we go. I love Marvel movies. I don't know if you can see this on the live stream, but I'm wearing my Captain America socks that Kenna bought me for Christmas this year because I love Marvel. I know it's kind of a nerdy thing. I don't care. I'm not a big comics guy. I just love the movies. I think they're wildly exciting. I have a bunch of kids, which means I've had a lot of babies in the past few years. So there's nothing better to do at 3 a.m. when you're feeding a baby than watch a random Avengers movie, right? So I've seen all of the Marvel movies probably an embarrassing number of times, but I promise you it was all like feeding babies at 2 a.m. for the most part. I'm also really sad somewhere deep inside that WandaVision is over now. I don't know what I'm going to do with my Fridays now that that's over. Waiting for Falcon and Winter Soldier to start up in a couple weeks. Anyway, doesn't matter. One of the things I love about Marvel, though, is this guy Stan Lee, right? I don't know if you guys know who Stan Lee is, but he is the creator of Marvel Comics. He's the guy who invented this whole universe in the first place. The reason that we have Avengers Endgame 2 years ago is because 40, 50 years ago, this guy, Stan, decided to create some comic books about these superheroes, right? He created Marvel, okay? And the fun thing about the movies is that Stan Lee, in every Marvel movie up to date, is in every single Marvel movie. He has a cameo in all 24 of these movies. Now, he's never himself. He always plays some other character. So he's like a bus driver or a beauty pageant judge, or he's a security guard, right? He plays something else in these movies. And I love that. I love that this guy who made this whole universe is like in their world, right? And one of the reasons that I love it is I think it sounds really familiar to me, and it should sound familiar to all of us, right? There is a person who created an entire universe out of his own mind, his own creativity. And in that universe, he is physically present himself. He interacts with the very things that he created himself in the first place, right? Now, if that doesn't sound familiar, you should probably go back to faith formation because that's like our story, right? Like God himself, who made the whole universe, remarkably, miraculously, insanely put himself into that universe. That's the mystery of Christmas, right? What I celebrated 2 years ago, right here in this corner, is the mystery of the Incarnation, that God himself, even though he didn't have to, purely out of love for us, took on a human body and put himself into our world. He walked with us. He talked to us. He touched people. He slept. He ate. This is amazing. This is one of the things that we know that Christianity is the fullness of truth, right? It's the only religion that dares to claim that God was a human being, that people talked to him, they saw him. There were witnesses of this God being born from a woman who was a virgin, dying on a cross, being dead for 3 days, and then literally physically not being dead anymore, rising from the dead. Now, we think about that, it kind of glosses over us a lot of times, right? If you were baptized Catholic, if you went to Catholic school, or if you've been to faith formation your whole life, a lot of us are like, yeah, God became Jesus. It's a whole thing. I get it, whatever. We can't whatever that, right? Like the insanity that God took a human body, that God had hair and feet and armpits is nuts to us, right? It should be crazy. But it's so crazy because it's just so beautiful, right? The Incarnation, Christmas Day, and 9 months before that, when before Jesus was a baby, he was an embryo and a zygote inside of Mary's womb. The Incarnation is the first, what we would call theology of the body. That when God took a human body, he made that body holy in a way that it wasn't yet holy. Now, don't get me wrong, the human body was always holy, right? We were always made in the image and likeness of God from Adam and Eve all the way through, right? But we had a wounded nature, obviously. Adam and Eve sinned, so we have original sin. So here comes Jesus, and God himself, just like Stan Lee in Marvel movies, is walking around our world that he created. He has a body, and everything that God touched or did as Jesus became holy. Sleep and rest is now holier than it was before Jesus because God himself took naps and slept, right? And as a parent of many little kids, I can tell you how holy sleep is. And you probably know that already when you've had like late night studying, right? Because Jesus ate with his friends, most famously at the Last Supper, but many other suppers before that, eating, breaking bread with people that we love is literally a holy act if we choose it to be now. Those are bodily holy things. And your physical body is holy in a way that it wasn't before Jesus. Your body matters because God took a human body. Now, I don't know where you're at with where your body is these days, right? I've been around high schoolers enough to know that many of you here or there probably have issues with the way that your body looks, right? When I was in 8th and 9th grade specifically, I hated the way that my body had been put together. When I was in 9th grade, I was this tall in 9th grade. You can't tell from there, but I was 6'2" in 9th grade, which is convenient when you're playing basketball. That's fine. Inconvenient everywhere else because I was a freak and everyone else was down here, right? Like I was a weirdo. And the worst part was I was 6'2" and like 150, 60 pounds, right? I was like the leg of this stand right here, right? That was my shape. It was ridiculous. That is good for nothing. No sport is it nice to be tall and weak, right? They would just like push me aside in the lane in basketball. I played one glorious year of football, freshman year, and they put me on the offensive line. Do you know what offensive linemen usually look like? They're 6'2" is fine. They were like twice my weight, right? Like I would try to block and I would go like this. And some guy a foot shorter than me would just be like, come on, and push me aside and be like, ow, all right, fine. And then I quit. It was great. That I did not like the way my body looked. Like I woke up in the mirror. I had this ridiculous like beanpole frame. I had a face full of acne. I had teeth that were weird and I had to have braces twice, right? I looked like a monster, or so I thought. The truth is, nobody saw me in the negative way that I did. The truth is, I didn't appreciate the miracle that was my body because I didn't know the value that God had put into me merely by becoming human himself. Listen, I don't know where you're at, male or female, in terms of how much you appreciate the body that God has given you, right? What I know is that you are beautiful and you are good, that God has made you intentionally and wonderfully exactly the way you are. And unfortunately, I also know that you and I live in a world that constantly tells you that you're not good enough, right? That constantly tells you that your body is not beautiful, is not good, is not valuable the way it is. Because think about it, every single commercial, everything that ever tries to make money off you, there's the implicit message, right, that you are not good enough the way you are. But listen, but you can be if you just buy this thing, right? If only you buy this particular brand of yoga pants, then you can be beautiful and attractive, right? And then you'll be good enough. If you only buy this one particular body spray, then the girls will flock to you, and then you'll be attractive. They won't even care what you look like because you'll smell just so delicious, right? But if you just buy this thing, only if you buy this makeup or this car, right, then you'll be good enough. Friends, we're living in a world that is lying to us every moment of every day, and we've got to have this foundation of knowing that your body is good because God made it and because God had one too. He blessed the human body, and he made your body valuable before you do anything, before you buy anything, no matter what you look like. Your body is good. That's why it's good for us to take good care of it, right? Speaking of healthy food and exercise, that's why it's important to take care of it. But God made you good, right? That's the original theology of the body. Your body matters. So that's your body. Let's talk about your soul for a second. I don't know if you know how amazing you are, but you, as a human being, wherever you are a body and a soul together. You're actually the only thing that God ever made that's both. So like the animals, for example, they are only bodies. They don't have souls like you and I do. They have they're animated by God, so they have some kind of spiritual basis. That's fine. But they don't have free will like we do, right? And then the angels, on the other hand, they have spirits. They are spirits without bodies. They don't have bodies at all. So you and I, human beings, are the only thing God ever made that's a body and a soul together in one. It's a beautiful reality, right? Now, your soul has some really important things, characteristics that make it work the right way. And if we don't know this, or if we ignore this, really tough things can happen to us. We can make bad decisions sometimes. The first mystery is this, the first characteristic of our souls. Your soul, among other things, has free will, it has intellect, and it has emotions. And when you and I use those three things at the same time together, we make great decisions, we do great things. But when you and I only use one or two of those things, or maybe even zero of those things, we make terrible decisions and we do dangerous things. So for example, if somebody makes a decision only by using their intellect to know what's true, right? Then they're not fully human, they're just limiting themselves to being like a robot, right? Like a robot is data in, response out. It doesn't have free will. So we've got to use more than just intellect to know what to do with our lives. Free will is made for us to choose the good in freedom. Free will doesn't mean I just get to do whatever I want, right? Some things that I want will hurt me. Free will is made to choose what is good, but to freely choose it, not to be forced into it, right? So free will is to choose the good in freedom. The problem is if we only use our free will, we limit ourselves from being fully human and we become like an infant, like a baby, right? I have a ton of babies at my house, right? They're all half my children are babies. I don't know if you have little brothers and sisters, if you ever babysit babies. I don't know if you're ever around toddlers, whatever. But the one thing that I know about little kids is that they just want everything. That's all they do is want, right? I want a snack. I want to go to the bathroom. I want a nap. They actually don't ever want a nap. They need a nap, but they want to stay awake and they'll cry because they want to stay awake, right? They want, because they're not as smart as you. They don't know enough to know what's good for them yet. And they're not as in touch with their emotions as you are. What they just want. The problem is, how many of us act like that as adults? Forget what's good for me. Forget how I feel about it. I just want it. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with guys and girls throughout the years in high school and college who have had major regrets, often after a weekend, because they just did what they wanted to do. They knew that it was the wrong thing. They felt that it was the wrong thing. If you would have asked them 6 hours earlier in the afternoon that day, they would have told you it's the wrong thing. But at the moment, at a party or with their boyfriend or girlfriend, they just felt like it. They just wanted to do it. So they did it. It's the danger of using only our will. And our emotions are another beautiful gift from God, right? Now, our emotions have a physical aspect too. They're connected to your hormones and all that stuff. That's fine. But it's also a spiritual reality that God gave you emotions to fight for what is healthy for you, to help you live well and to help you make other people that will live well, right? That's the reason that emotions exist, for well-being. But if we only make decisions based on how we feel, we limit ourselves to being like an animal, not like a person, right? Animals don't have free will like you and I do. They're not as smart as you. I don't care how smart your dog is. He's not as smart as you. But they desire things, right? They want food, they want a mate, and they want to sleep. That's pretty much it, right? And again, I can't tell you how many people I've talked to, myself included, who have had major regrets and who have been driven to confession because they just did what they felt like doing, right? They just did what their desires told them. I want it, I feel like it, so I'm going to do it. It's really dangerous for us. If we only make decisions based on our feelings can lie. Our feelings do lie to us frequently. Not that feelings are bad, but they're just not always true. They just come and go. So we have to balance them with these other two parts of our souls, right? We need to give discipline to these parts of our souls and have them work together. Like I said, when you use all three of these things, you make great decisions, you do great things, right? The second mystery of your soul starts with these two awesome people. These are my mom and dad, Tim and Beth Millay. Don't they look sweet? With my dad's 670 stash, it's just like he's rocking it. It's great. They both look almost this good to this day. They're awesome. My dad is a retired surgeon. My mom stayed home and sold makeup to raise us, and she's the best. They're both great, right? They're so happy because this picture was taken on their wedding day, right? August 4th, 1979. They are so happy. What's strange, though, about this picture is that I wasn't alive yet. So I don't know why they're so happy. Like, what would you have to be smiling about without an awesome son like me? But whatever, I guess the wedding will do it. That's fine. I love this picture because pictures like this and pictures at your house of the world before you were born, right? A sad, dark place before you came into the world. There are pictures like that in your house. They remind us that we come from other people. That before I was here, before I existed, I did not exist except for the love of these two people. We come from a man and a woman, right? We come from other people. The second picture is this right here. This is our Christmas card picture from this past year. These are my 7 children. I'm going to try to use my laser so at least you people who are here can see. All right, so there's me and Kenna tied up by our children with Christmas lights. This is Ella Claire, she's 10, and she's an introvert, so she's reading. This is Xavier, he's 8, and he's a boy, so he's eating. This is Trey, who's 5, and he has a sleeve full of Oreos because he loves it. He's wearing his Harrison Smith shirt backwards. I'm not really sure why. This is Damien. He's 3, so of course he has a BB gun, which is just a fun thing for a 3-year-old. These are our twins, Juliana and Cora. If you ask me which one is which, I can't tell you because they're identical. I have a strong sensation that this is Juliana. I think that's Cora, but it's hard to tell, right? They're almost 2, and then this is Lucia. She's almost 1. She's the most wonderful, calm baby we've ever had, because I think after 6 kids, God was like, just have an easy one. Like, you've suffered enough. Here you go. Take a happy baby. Lucia was born before the twins' first birthday, which means, if you're doing your math, we had 3 babies in less than 1 year, which is a lot of babies. It's the best ever. It's totally nuts. Our house is loud, and I love it so much. It's the best. I love this picture for many reasons. One of them is my son's holding a gun. The second reason is that you and I, if we're called to marriage, are made for other people. That you, as a human being, contain with you and someone of the opposite sex, if you're called to marriage, what it takes to make a person with God's help. You and I are made for other people if we're called to marriage. It's amazing, right? Now, here's the beauty of it. God put this physical reality on your body. There is literal body language that tells us these two realities, that we come from other people and that we're made for other people. The first one is this. Wherever you are, here at home, do me a favor, just find your belly button real quick. Go ahead and point to it. There it is. Yes, you're all very smart. That's good. Your belly button, I have to, sometimes when there's a big group of people, I have to warn them and tell them not to move clothing. Because I did this that one time, and the 6th grader was like, hey-oh! And I was like, Jake, put your shirt down. That's not what we're doing here. Anyway, belly button, great. On your body is a physical reminder that you come from 2 other people. Your belly button was once connected to an umbilical cord, which was once connected to a placenta, which was connected to your mom, and the only reason that you were in your mother's womb in the first place is because she had sex with a man who is your father, and you now exist. Thanks be to God. That's amazing. There's a physical mark on your body that reminds you that you come from two other people. Now, here's the beautiful thing. It doesn't actually matter if those two people are still married. It doesn't matter if those two people were ever married. It doesn't matter if the people that gave birth to you are the people that raised you, or if you were adopted beautifully by someone else. None of that matters. What matters is that you came from a man and a woman, period. It's the way that we're made. It's the beauty of our design, right? Do not find this part of your body, but on your body right now, there are genitals, sexual organs, the things that make you either male or female biologically, that are a physical sign on your body that you are made to create other people if God calls you to marriage. That right now, you have on your body a physical sign that God has given you that says, if you are called to marriage with someone of the opposite sex, and only with someone of the opposite sex, can you make another person with God's help. That's amazing, right? There are parts of the male body that literally don't make sense without a woman in a marriage. There are parts of the female body that literally can't be understood without a man in a marriage. They are complementary, we would call that, right? That they fit together perfectly with a purpose. That we are made for other people as well if we're called to marriage. What an amazing reality, right? That in our bodies, God has put our past and our future. That's the reason that sex is so powerful, that sex is such a strong desire, because it's so good. Sex makes children. Sex bonds husbands and wives. It's so good, and he put that in our very bodies. It's natural, right? Finally, the third mystery, the hypostatic union, right? I don't know how many of you guys understood this back in the day, but right, we have a God, we have Jesus, who is human and divine, right? He's not sometimes human, sometimes God. He's not half human, half God. Always human, always God, all the time, right? Sometimes high schoolers and even young adults will ask me, like, well, what does a great relationship look like? What does it mean to have a great dating or married relationship, you know? And the beautiful thing is, we as Catholics, we just look at the nearest crucifix. In Jesus himself, we find his humanness and his godness, humanity and divinity, that were united without obsession and distinct without divorce. His humanity and his divinity were always united without being the same thing. They were always different but never separate. What does that mean for dating or for marriage? What that means is a man and a woman are meant to be united to each other without obsession. That means that a healthy relationship is people who are connected, but they don't sacrifice their identity to pour it into the other person. Again, friends of mine growing up, high schoolers that I've worked with, they've started dating someone, and they've given up on relationships with all of their family and friends because they're obsessed with this one person. And we're not made to live like that. We're not meant to live like that. That's an unhealthy way to abandon our own identity, right? And at the same time, we're called to be different people, but never divorced, never separate is what that means, right? Now, you and I know the word divorce in a bunch of different ways, right? We know divorce in terms of marriage. And what that means for us is that this is no judgment on anyone who has ever been divorced at all. What that means is that God's plan was for marriage to be beautiful, loving, and lifelong. In Jesus' body himself, he shows us the design for love and marriage, which is lifelong. Divorce was never part of the plan. It doesn't mean that people who have divorced are like outside of God's love, nothing like that. What it means is that God has a plan for your marriage that doesn't involve divorce. And if you and I are willing to actually listen to him and to be forgiving, to be loving with our spouse and with God, that he will work out that plan in us, right? It's a beautiful relationship between our souls and our bodies. And so where does that leave us? What that means is that our body speaks a language. If these three things are true, that we have our intellect, our will, and our emotions, we have things on our body that tell us where we're from and what we're made for, that our souls and bodies themselves are made for a great relationship, and Christ is the model. What it means is that the body speaks a language, that our bodies tell us things about our souls, so much so that every time that a man or a woman is in any kind of a sexual relationship, whether they're dating someone, whether they're married, whether even it's a pornography situation, every time that someone is in a sexual relationship, what they are saying with their bodies and their souls to that other person is this: I take you to be mine. I promise to be true to you in good times and in bad, in sickness and in health. I will love you and honor you all the days of my life. That's what their bodies are saying to each other, right? Now, if that doesn't sound familiar, you haven't been to a wedding recently, which maybe none of us have, I don't know. That's the wedding vows, right? What our bodies and souls say to each other in any sexual relationship is the actual vows of a marriage. And that's massively important. What that means is that the church is not being mean and cruel when she says that we shouldn't have sex before we're married or outside of marriage at all. What the church is saying is it's actually dishonest to have sex outside of marriage. It's only after a couple stands up on an altar in front of God and all their loved ones and says those words with their mouth and their whole heart. I promise to be true to you in good times and bad, in sickness and health. I will love you and honor you all the days of my life. Only after we say that with our will are we truthfully able to act it out with our bodies. Anytime outside of a marriage, we're just acting out things that we haven't been able to promise. And it's setting people up to break promises and to be lied to. That's one of the reasons that there's a doctor in Michigan, actually, who refers to anxiety and depression in young women as a sexually transmitted disease. Not because it's a virus or anything like that, obviously, but she will tell you if there is a high school or college young woman who comes into her office and is struggling with symptoms of anxiety or depression, she can almost guarantee you that that young woman is sexually active. Why? Because she's been told with the bodies of people that she's been involved with sexually that she will never be abandoned, that she'll be loved forever, that she'll be cherished, and that he will be faithful to her forever. And if and when that relationship inevitably ends, she feels anxious, she feels depressed, she feels abandoned and lied to. Now, here's the trick. Those guys may never have intended any of that. But the key is, it doesn't matter. It's just the way it is. Why do you think there's so much struggling and drama and issues around sexuality in our world? Because it's just the way we're made. And just like good food and exercise, we just don't like it. So we try to do all of these other things that have never worked, but we're in such denial that we try to convince ourselves, maybe it'll work for me. Maybe this time will be different. We ignore reality. It's not a secret. It's the way it's always been, right? So what about real life practical stuff, right? Like, what does it matter if we have sex before we're married? We love each other, right? If we're in love, who cares? And again, we can only honestly act out this love after we vow it at the altar. This is actually so ingrained in us that right now, wherever you are, there's a hormone in your body called oxytocin. It's a physiological evidence of this spiritual thing, right? Oxytocin does a bunch of stuff. One of the things that oxytocin does is when someone is in a sexual relationship, oxytocin is released. And it creates an emotional bond between that person and the object of their sexual relationship, right? An emotional bond. And that bond is strengthened each time that oxytocin is released. Interestingly, it's also released in women when they give birth or when they nurse their babies. So it emotionally bonds a mother to her children as well. It's this bonding hormone, and it helps us be great husbands and wives, committed to our spouses, great mothers, committed to their children. But the problem is this: if that relationship is ever broken, if a sexual relationship ends, if a dating relationship or a marriage separates, then that bond is weakened, and oxytocin is unable to be released as powerfully the next time. We are told in our bodies to be faithful to one person for our entire life, starting on our wedding night. It's built into our very bodies itself, right? That's why premarital sex is really a problem. It's dangerous, right? It's creating this habit of separation, and even our bodies respond that oxytocin release is weaker because of it. Premarital sex is a sin, we call it in the church, because that's just code for dangerous. It just hurts. So God says, I want to spare you the danger. I want to spare you the heartache. Please don't do this to yourself. What about the question, like, why is porn so bad? Like, who am I hurting if I'm using pornography? Who cares? Like, there's no sexually transmitted diseases. I'm not getting anybody pregnant. I'm not even breaking any hearts. Like, what's the problem, right? Well, that oxytocin thing I talked about in dating relationships, that actually applies to pornography as well. Oxytocin is released in pornography and sexual acts that way, just like in a relationship. So that still is harming, literally, our ability to be faithful later on, right? God can overcome anything. No one is too far gone for a great marriage and a great relationship. But there are literal consequences to this, even in our bodies, especially in guys. I mean, pornography is a problem for women sometimes too, but I can't tell you how many guys that I've talked to over the years in my ministry who are just in the grips of absolute addiction to pornography. Guys, especially when they go off to college and they have unlimited Wi-Fi, unlimited privacy, and they just are in the grip of pornography every single day, right? So much so that there are guys I know who have taken that addiction into marriage and have had terrible experiences in the beginning of marriage, sometimes even early divorces, because they're so in the grip of addiction. And we think addiction sometimes is always a chemical thing, right? Well, you can't be addicted to anything but like heroin and crack and alcohol. You know that addiction involves dopamine in your brain, right? It's not just a substance that causes it. Like people are literally addicted to gambling too, right? That's a legitimate addiction. And pornography itself literally creates an addiction. They've done brain studies on the brains of men who use pornography and men who use cocaine. And they found it triggers the exact part and amount of dopamine release in their brain. It's literally creating addicts who can't get away. And it's teaching us, worst of all, to treat people like objects. That person, that woman, that man on a screen is not a human being that I need to love and cherish. That's a thing for me to use just to get some pleasure for 5 seconds, right? St. John Paul II said one time, in short, the problem with pornography is not that it shows too much of the person, but that it shows too little. It covers up their soul by showing their whole body, right? It's dangerous. If it's a part of your life or someone that you love, please get rid of it now, whatever it takes. Throw your phone in the bathtub if you need to get rid of it. If it's your parents' phone, maybe don't do that. But take drastic measures is my point, right? What about modesty? Why is modesty such a big deal? Why does anybody care what I wear? Who cares? Nobody really cares what I wear. But especially for the women in our world, who cares about modesty? Why don't tell me what to wear, right? Now remember, hold on, you're a body and a soul together, male or female, right? So the problem with physical bodies is that at a certain point of undress, it's possible to show so much body that it's hard to see your soul. It's possible to show so much body that it's hard to see the beautiful soul that's contained with your body. Remember what St. John Paul II said, right? It's not that it shows too much, but it shows too little. And it's our job to take care of each other, to look out for the good of everyone around us, right? So what that means, men, it's our job to help the women in our lives to be good, to honor the women in our lives, to trust them with love and dignity, no matter what they're wearing. There is no excuse for treating a woman with anything less than charity and dignity, cherishing all the women in our lives and loving them genuinely, right? Not treating them like objects. I don't care what they're wearing. There's no excuse, right? And ladies, as a man, I would suggest that part of your job, part of your opportunity is to help the men in your lives to be good, to help them be good and to make it as easy as possible for them to be honorable and to see your true beauty. Not just your physical beauty, which is obviously there, but to see your true beauty. Not because it's your fault if we look at you the wrong way or anything like that, but because it's an opportunity for you to help us be good, just like it's our opportunity to help the women in our lives be good, right? And finally, what about same-sex attraction, right? Or same-sex marriage? What about people who are attracted to the same gender? What's wrong with that? Why would you stop someone from loving someone who they feel like they love, right? Now remember again, go back to those fundamentals, right? That sex has a purpose. That sex isn't just about what I feel like doing. That sex is meant to unite people together in marriage, and sex is meant to make children. Sex makes babies, and there's no way around that for us, right? It's the way we're made. Now the beautiful thing for us as Catholics is that we don't have to choose between these two terrible options the world gives us, where on one hand, we have to say either do whatever you want, nobody cares, have sex with anyone at any time, it doesn't matter. And on the other hand, we don't have to get on board with people who say, well, if you're attracted to the same gender, clearly God made a mistake and maybe you're going to hell, right? Those are both terribly wrong, and Catholicism has never believed either of those things. We have this beautiful opportunity as Catholics to see the true dignity and love of every human being. Everyone, regardless of who they desire or love, is a child of God, period. Before they do anything, whatever they do, they are loved by God. And there's a place for them in the church, no matter what they do. And at the same time, sex and marriage are made with our very bodies giving us the proof between a man and a woman. That's what sex is for. That's the reason sex exists, is this beautiful gift, right? So, we have this great opportunity to tell the truth, to know the truth, first of all. So again, go back to the beginning. Just think for yourself for a moment. Like, is this true? Right? Like, forget what, again, the Pope tells me or my parents tell me, what this weird youth minister tells me. Like, is this true? Are there things here that ring true for you? That your body was made good, no matter what the world tells you? That your body was made for a purpose? That things on your body tell you that purpose? That if you live that purpose out, there is joy and fulfillment and peace. And when we reject that purpose, when we do something our own way, that there's danger and maybe even heartbreak in that. You're called to be holy, right? You're called to become more yourself, and faith is about doing it. This might seem tough. It might seem hard. Remember that quote from Chesterton, right? It's not that the Christian ideal has been tried and found wanting. It's been found difficult and left untried. So try it. Do it. Test it. If you're miserable following the teachings of the church, by no means do I expect you to continue. But if you follow what the church says and you find joy, maybe there's something there, right? Let's take a little bit of time for questions, either from folks that are here, from folks that are home. If you emailed Joe or Addie, you can send them your questions, and we'll see what we get. All righty? I'll let you guys take it. It's all right. It's always hard under pressure. That's a great question. So Addie asked, how far is too far, right? So many times have I been asked that. I don't know why, but it's typically by guys. And it doesn't mean that guys are bad or anything. I think it's that guys are maybe practical or something. I don't know. So are women. Doesn't matter. So here's the deal. The trick with that question is that there's a bit of a problem in the question, right? And it's a good question asked by good people, so there's no issue there, right? But that's kind of like me asking, how far can I get Kenna to 494 before she gets hit by a truck, right? Like, what's the closest I can get to the line of that street before she gets maimed or killed, right? Like, what I should really be asking is, like, what's the safest place I can keep this person that I love, right? How far is too far? Now, the reason that that's a good question, though, is that it gets at this really interesting distinction, right? That there's a difference in our lives between affection and arousal, right? Affection is always a good thing, right? You, whoever you are, doesn't matter how outwardly affectionate of a person you are affectionate to the people that you love in your lives, right? And there's different forms of affection for different types of relationships, and that's good, right? The way that you show affection to your parents is way different than the way you show affection to your best friend or your girlfriend or boyfriend or your grandparents, whatever. But it's all different types of affection. And affection says, I want to show you how wonderful you are in a physical way, right? I want to make you feel loved because you have a physical body, and I want to express this love physically, right? Affection is always good. So like giving your parents a hug, giving your friends a high five, like holding hands with someone that you're dating, even kissing, I would be convinced in a lot of situations, totally can be affection with very little danger, right? Now, arousal is different. Arousal is the physical response of the human body by sexual desire. And the point of arousal in the first place is to help a husband and wife get ready for a sexual union, right? Get ready for sex. So the problem with arousal before marriage or outside of marriage is that it cannot be completed or fulfilled in a holy, happy way. So if that leads to actual sexual intercourse before marriage, or even all the steps leading up to it, that's not what it was made for. So arousal outside of marriage, before marriage, ends up saying something like, how can I use your body to make me feel good? That's terrible, right? Like, none of us want that. And most of us don't actually intend that when we get into relationships before marriage. But that's what arousal means before marriage. Now, the difference is marriage changes everything. In a marriage, arousal is a good, beautiful, holy thing if it's used for love for your spouse. Then it can be fulfilled in a holy, good way, right? So how far is too far? Before you're married, up to the point of arousal, usually, almost with every single couple, is totally beautiful, holy, and healthy. That's great. Affection is always good. But when arousal begins, and there's very obvious signs that arousal is beginning for any human being, when arousal begins, that's dangerous, possibly sinful territory before marriage. And again, the marriage vows change everything. And then arousal can be good and holy kind of at all times. Does that make sense? That help? Yeah. Sweet. What else? Good stuff. Sir.
So in your talk, you kind of argued that our bodies, particularly our body parts, tell us who we are and what we're
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But I think nowadays, a lot of people take for granted especially like gender ideologies, that like our bodies don't really tell us who we are, what gender we are, and as we grow up, we'll discover more than what our bodies tell us.
Totally. Yep.
I'm not really sure how to respond to that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What to make of that, 'cause it seems hard to know that.
Totally. Yeah, so Joe's asking, if you couldn't hear him on the live stream, that, there's this idea that our bodies, there are physical things on our bodies that tell us our identity and our purpose, right? Who we are and what we're here for. But with a lot of the conversation around in our culture about transgender and gender transitioning, gender ideology, things like that, it starts to beg the question, like, well, does my body actually tell me who I am? Or can I be someone entirely different from my body? What if I don't feel like the person that my body tells me I am, right? I'm married to a marriage and family therapist, so she comes across questions like this very frequently. She has a good psychological therapy background, which is very helpful for me as a youth minister too, to pick her brain. And one of the things that she has come to understand is there's a couple things. Number one, there is an actual diagnosable psychological issue in the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistics Manual, that diagnoses psychological mental health issues called gender dysphoria, right? So someone who truly perceives themselves to be a different gender than their body is experiencing gender dysphoria. It doesn't mean that they are a bad person. It doesn't mean even that those feelings are sinful or anything like that. It means that they have a problem, a disease that all of the psychologists in the world have agreed on that needs treatment. Just like if someone has pneumonia or lupus, they need treatment. They're not a bad person. It's not their fault. They just need help. That's it, right? There's a similar disease, actually, called body dysmorphia, right? Where a person would look in the mirror and they would see with their eyes and with their brains an entirely different shape of person than the person who there is looking at the mirror. So you see this come out oftentimes in eating disorders and things like anorexia, bulimia, right? Where someone, a beautiful and wonderful daughter, son of God, will look in the mirror and see a horribly ugly, overweight person. Even if they are so thin that they're in physical danger, they will see themselves as fat, as overweight, right? Now, if you or I were presented with someone like that, if they told us that this is the way they see themselves, how horrible would it be for us to say to them, you're right, whatever you feel like you are, that's what you are. You can be fat if you want to be fat. Whatever you want to be, that's fine, right? No, we would never do that because it's just not true. It's not that this is their fault. We wouldn't blame them for this. We would just reach out with compassion and with love, right? And say, this is not the truth about who you are. You are better than you see yourself, not worse. And the same principle applies for that gender dysmorphia issue, right? For transgender feelings, thoughts, desires, anything like that, right? You are better than you think you are, not worse, right? I'm here to love you. I'm here to help you. I'm here to listen. I'm not here to try to change anything about you. I'm just here to listen, to be with you in this, right? That there's truth that it's up to us to stand in and to proclaim, even when it's difficult, but always to be loving, to lead with love, right? I don't know if that helps at all, but it's helpful at least from conversations I've had. Yeah. Yeah, what else? We got like maybe a minute left, something like that? Yeah, anything else? Totally. Right. Yeah, so Eddie's talking about resources that are good for anyone who struggles with any form of sin or struggles in terms of chastity, same-sex attraction, pornography, anything like that. So she mentioned Eden Invitation. Eden, as in the Garden of Eden, invitation. Sometimes I talk fast and it causes problems. Eden Invitation. Google it. It's an awesome resource for anyone who is faithful and attracted to the same gender, right? There's a beautiful life ahead of you if that's something that you feel or are. And Eden Invitation has this amazing understanding of that, right? Of the place in the church, the place in the family of God for people who are same-sex attracted. So that's a great option. In terms of pornography, Covenant Eyes is a great option. It's a very practical kind of accountability software that a man or a woman can use on their own computer, tablet, iPhone, whatever, so that they can have like a partner to hold them accountable. So literally, there's a guy right now in Malibu, California, who is a former high school youth of mine here in Minnesota, who I am his accountability partner on Covenant Eyes. So every Sunday, I get an update with just like very blurry, not specific screenshots of things that he's been looking at on his phone, right? And most of the times I can see and I can tell it's The Office through the blur, right? But it's really good for him because he knows that it's accountability, right? He knows that I love him no matter what. He knows that there's no judgment, even if he fails, but he knows that there are consequences to his actions, right? It's an amazing reality for all of us. We forget that. We convince ourselves there's no consequence. No one will ever find out. So Covenant Eyes is a great option to talk to a best friend, an uncle, a youth minister, anybody that can be your partner in that, right? And then anything basically that Jason ever does, right? So chastityproject.com. There's all kinds of great resources out there for relationships, for dating, for some of those questions like how far is too far, just really good stuff that's not, it's not awkward, it's not shaming, it's not bad. Like sex is a gift and it's beautiful and they approach it in exactly that way. So that's a great place to start too. Yeah. Totally. Yeah, Addie's just saying that they'll collect some of those resources and they'll send it out to the group so that you guys have that stuff kind of at your fingertips there too. Yep. Sweet. Yeah. That's right. Yes. If you came like 2 minutes late and you're on the live stream, if you can email Joe today, like right now, before you forget, with your favorite ice cream flavor as the way of making sure that you were actually here and tuned in for the entire talk and you didn't check out after 10 minutes, right? Favorite ice cream flavor, send it to Joe. And if you say anything but cookie dough, I love you so much, but you're just wrong. That's okay. It's fine. Good, because it's the right answer. I mean, some things are like opinion. No, this is objective. It's cookie dough. That's it, right? Am I right? Yeah, cookie dough? No, you disagree. Oh, that's okay. I love you anyway. It's all right. It's a topping. Oh, but if it's in the ice cream, it's even better. I would put it on top too. I'd put cookie dough on the cookie dough. That'd be fine. Exactly, right, exactly. And apparently it's not up to me to decide truth, whatever, that's fine. Thank you guys at home. Thanks for being here, fellas. Appreciate it. Thanks. God bless you guys.